Alright, let's dive into a real head-scratcher from ancient Egypt. We're talking about a mystery so deep, it feels like a pharaoh was just, poof, erased from history. This is going to be a good one. So, what if I told you there was a pharaoh who ruled one of the greatest empires ever, but then just vanished, leaving behind nothing but a few whispers? It's like he's a ghost haunting the halls of history. And that's exactly the puzzle we're going to try and piece together. Alright, so who is this ghost king? Well, our investigation kicks off where pretty much all historical mysteries do, with the tiny little clues and shadows left behind in the history books. And here's the thing that makes this so weird. You know the ancient Egyptians, right? They were obsessive record keepers. They carved everything into stone so it would last forever. So for a king to be a total blank slate, that's not just odd, it's a massive red flag. Something's not right. And that name is Weneg, just kind of flickering there on the edge of history, almost completely swallowed up by the sands of time. I mean, look at this. This is what Egyptologists are up against. The case file on Weneg is basically empty. We've got a couple of inscriptions, but no big tomb, no statues, nothing. The only real clue is this weird, mysterious flower symbol that always shows up with his name. It feels like a dead end, right? But maybe not. Okay, so with almost zero evidence, what do you do? Well, this leads us to our first big theory. It's basically historians trying to connect the very few dots they have. Let's walk through their case. But first, you need to know this one crucial thing about pharaohs. They didn't just have one name, like a president or a prime minister today. Nope, they collected names. They had a Horus name, a throne name, all these titles that symbolize their power. It's kind of like having a bunch of different official job titles all at the same time. And that's what leads to the big question for this theory. What if Weneg wasn't a separate guy at all? What if Weneg was just another name, an alias maybe, for a pharaoh we do know about from that time, a king named Raenub? And when you lay it out like this, it actually sounds pretty convincing. I mean, think about it. The way they used names back then, it fits. And Raenub was a big deal with the sun god Ra, and Weneg's name also pops up in religious texts. Plus, they're both from the same messy, poorly documented era. All the pieces seem to click into place, don't they? And, let's be honest with ourselves for a second. Our brains love to do this. When there are gaps in a story, we automatically try to fill them in, right? We want a nice, clean explanation. And this one king, two names theory is super neat and tidy. But, well, history is rarely that simple. So let's start pulling at the threads of this nice, neat theory and see what happens. Because spoiler alert, it starts to fall apart. And this is where the mystery gets really interesting. Okay, look at this. This is the biggest problem with the whole theory. See the symbols? Weneg is always connected to that flower. Raenub, on the other hand, used his own sun-themed symbols. So why? Why would the same king use two totally different logos, basically? It just doesn't make sense. It's like if a company had two completely separate brands that never overlapped. It's weird. And it gets even more complicated when you look at later records. See, the Egyptians kept these king lists, basically a history of all their rulers. Raenub is on those lists, clear as day. But Weneg? Nowhere to be found. So that leaves us with a couple of possibilities. Either Weneg was his own king and he got forgotten, or maybe even deliberately erased, or maybe, just maybe, he wasn't a king at all. So how could a whole king just get lost? To get that, you have to understand the time he lived in. The Second Dynasty wasn't some glorious golden age. It was messy. We're talking about a time of political chaos, maybe even civil war. It was an era of kings who didn't last very long on the throne. Exactly. In a chaotic time like that, it's totally believable that a guy could become king, rule for just a few years, and then gone. Maybe he died. Maybe he was overthrown. And he would leave behind almost no trace for us to find thousands of years later. Weneg could absolutely be one of those lost pharaohs. Okay, so we've looked at both sides of the coin. Where does that leave us? What's the final verdict on our ghost pharaoh? I love this quote because it really gets to the heart of it. We like to think of history as this one solid true story, but it's not, especially ancient history. It's more like being an archaeologist. You're just trying to put together a picture from a bunch of broken shards. And really, that's the big takeaway here. The truth? The real 100% truth about Weneg we'll probably never know. There's no single right answer. And honestly, that's what makes this story so cool. It reminds you that history isn't some dusty old book that's finished. It's an active investigation that's still going on. So I'll leave you with the same question that still bugs the experts. Was Weneg just another name for Raenub, a simple case of mistaken identity? Or was he a real king, a pharaoh who ruled during a chaotic time and was almost completely wiped from the record books? The mystery is still very much alive.